Hey, it's Clayton Olson, and this video is 5 core beliefs that keep you chasing love. How to move from anxious to secure attachment, and the beliefs to do so. I'm going to cover 5 beliefs that are often unconscious, things that you might be believing are reality that actually have you chase love, have you show up anxious in relationship, anxious in dating. And I'm going to also show you what the secure shift is, how to take that belief, number one, identify it, see it as a belief rather than reality, and install another perspective, another lens to look at your life through, to look at life and other people through, that will start to help you move into secure attachment so you can have an experience of how to create love that lasts. If this is your first time on my channel, I'd love for you to subscribe if this content resonates with you. I've been working with people for the past 12 years on the deeper drivers of their most painful experiences and helping them shift those so they can have a new experience of themselves and relationship and create love that lasts. As I go through this material, I'm going to talk about beliefs specifically, rather than just the behaviors of what someone would do in order to shift into secure attachment. We're going to talk about the underlying framework underneath what actually creates anxious attachment. The beliefs that I open up here are not an exhaustive list of things that you might believe in order to be anxiously attached. In fact, you might be watching this and you might resonate with one of them. You might resonate with 5 of them, and there are probably a number of others that are present as well, that are running in the background, that are taking bandwidth and having you feel anxious in relationship, and maybe creating even a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'll talk more about how that works with beliefs. I'll talk about the belief, the origin of the belief, the cost of having that belief, and the secure shift is, and I'll give you a question at the end of each one that you can begin to journal on or think about that could start to help you create a new way of being, a new way of showing up in your love and relationships. A belief is simply a repeated conclusion, a story told enough times by yourself or by others that became a lens for you to see reality through, not even realizing that you're actually looking through a pair of tinted glasses. When a belief lives in the dark, it runs your life. It shapes how you see love. It shapes what you tolerate, how you chase, what you think you deserve. The power of bringing these beliefs to your conscious awareness is that once you can see them, you can actually start to question them. And once you start to question them, you can imagine a new way of being beyond them. A life that's not just built on fear, but on your actual worth. Not on your survival, but on the truth and on the intention of what you want to create in your relationship and how you want to thrive. Each belief is like an operating system running in the background of our life. They are born from a place of survival, but they are not the truth of who you actually are. You may relate to all of these beliefs, or you may relate to just one. So they're so powerful, though, that it can only take one of these beliefs to create a way of being in relationship that is really not workable, that has you feel anxious, that has you feel like people are pulling away, or has you chasing love. Most of us don't actually realize that beliefs are just thoughts. We think that they're facts. We think of them as reality, but they're not. They're interpretations, stories that your nervous system once created to make sense of the emotional terrain you were navigating. It is a survival strategy, meaning that at one point it served a purpose. It served a purpose in your life when you were little. It helped you make sense of perhaps something that was happening with your parents when you were young. It helped you develop a way of being able to have hope as a young one, to try to create connection by maybe over-functioning, over-performing, or tracking the moods of the people around you. These types of things helped you stay in connection and not be abandoned, or gave you something to work on so that you would not be in a place where you don't feel like you exist with the people that you are completely reliant on for your survival. So what happens is, as we create these different beliefs about ourselves, about life, about other people that feed into this anxious attachment, we end up forgetting that they're beliefs, they're decisions that are made at a younger age, and then those beliefs become invisible. They just become what reality is to us. And then we go out in life, and what often happens is we end up recreating situations that are oddly familiar to when we were younger. So let's dive in. All right, the first belief that keeps you chasing love is that love is earned through effort. that the love you receive is earned through effort. Where did this start? You might believe this because maybe you were praised when you performed when you were little, or maybe you were punished or ignored when you didn't. You may have learned at a very young age that in order to maintain closeness to people you loved, you had to either please, perform, or perfect to stay close to them. And how this shows up is you might overfunction. And how you might overfunction is that you're always giving. You feel that you give more than you actually get. You feel like you have to be on in the relationship. You might have a sense of exhaustion underneath all of this. You anticipate their needs, you filter your truth, and you worry that you might be too much if you were fully expressed. Now, the hidden cost of this is that you never actually feel chosen by the person that you're with. Or if you do feel chosen, it's only temporary and it's conditional based on what you are doing or bringing to the relationship. You might be confusing acceptance with admiration. And what ends up happening is you attract people who actually want you for your performance and what you can do for them rather than your actual presence. The secure shift to a belief rooted in secure attachment, trusting yourself, trusting life, trusting the world, is to realize that perhaps the truth is that love is received through your presence, that you're lovable when you're still, when you're soft, when you're real, not just when you're useful. The question I might ask you here for you to think about is, who are you when you are not performing in relationship? Who are you when you're not performing in relationship? What would you need to believe about your worth in order to show up to the relationship empty-handed and still feel inherently lovable? What would you have to believe about your worth? And then just start to imagine, how will your relationship change when you know that your presence is enough? Just imagine that for a moment. Imagine a version of you showing up in a relationship, trusting that your presence is enough to be lovable. What would be different about how you'd show up? What would you be doing? What would you not be doing? The practice you can do here to step into it more fully is to put your hand on your heart and just speak aloud. I am that love is received through my presence. I am that my presence is enough. I am that my presence is enough. And you can try that out and just feel it. Feel it in your body. When you speak it, what do you feel happen? What do you feel come up? You might feel some resistance. You might feel some confusion. But just notice, what would it feel like in your body when that is true? Just imagine that. And these are us beginning to create more flexibility and start to crack the old frame and help you begin to step into a new way of showing up that is rooted in a new way of seeing yourself in life. The second core belief that you might be believing that has you chasing love is, if they pull away, I must have done something wrong. If this person pulls away from me, then it's my fault. I must have done something wrong. The origin of this, as a child, emotional withdrawal may have been a form of punishment or control, or perhaps you were with somebody who was overwhelmed as a parent, and you might have came to a conclusion that, as a little one, that if there was a disconnection, it was your fault, rather than actually a lack of capacity from your parent. The reason children come to these conclusions that it's their fault is because there's a quote from one of my mentors, Carl Buchheit, who says, when a child makes themselves a source of the problem, they can generate hope that they can be the source of the solution. Right? So if I am the problem, if I am the reason the disconnect is happening, then I have some agency to reestablish the connection. Whereas if the connection isn't my fault and it's all up to them, then I might end up crashing into hopelessness, which is actually a very annihilating experience for a little one, because if they have no power to establish reconnection, that can mean death at a young age. Now, if we carry that into our adulthood, we can see how suddenly we start blaming ourselves, taking way too much responsibility for a disconnection in the relationship. And that is an outdated, archaic belief that is firing. What is it that I'm making their space mean about me? What is it that I'm making them taking space in the relationship mean about me and my value? Let's just look at that. What's the calculation I'm making there? And think about this one. How would your behavior change when you trusted that their silence is not your fault? How would you shift what you did, what you said, how you showed up, when you know that their behavior is not your fault? Start to imagine that and feel into it. And the third belief that keeps you chasing love is, my needs are too much. My needs are too much for the relationship. My needs are too much for anybody out there. So I need to suppress them. I need to not express them because that will scare them away. The origin of this is that your needs were shamed, ignored, or possibly met with guilt trips, or perhaps you were just neglected, a parent that did not have the capacity to actually meet your needs, anticipate them, or give you what you wanted. So you were taught that your needs, and you came to a conclusion that your needs are actually a burden and will create disconnection in the relationship. They will stop love from flowing. So what you learned is you learned to disappear in order to belong. You learn to disappear in relationship in order to belong to the relationship system. And how this shows up, you downplay your emotions, you delay your asks, the things you need, you stay silent to avoid being seen as needy. You only express your when you're already in pain, or you suppress them entirely. And often if you do finally express them, they come out with such force that is disproportionate to the context of what's happening in the relationship, because you have been suppressing them so much. And that can create rupture and confusion with the person that you're with. The hidden cost of holding on to this belief in relationship is that you abandon yourself on a daily basis while you're with somebody. You enter relationships where your silence is actually required in order to keep the relationship alive. And you might even become resentful of people who don't meet your needs, despite never giving them a chance to. The secure shift is to come into this belief as a foundational pillar of secure attachment, of you trusting life, yourself, and others. Say to yourself, my needs are valid and welcome in healthy love. Needing connection, reassurance, space, or affection isn't weak. It's me being human. And expressing those needs is how real intimacy begins. So a reflection for you around this one. When you feel into the voice of that your needs are too much, whose voice is that? Is that your voice or somebody else's voice from the past? Is that a parent's voice? Where did you learn that? What's the cost of continuing to silence yourself? Imagine that. If you continue to silence yourself, what will happen a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if you continue to not speak up for what you need? And then switching into looking slightly into the future, what would it look like right now to express one small need in your relationship? What would that look like and how would it feel? What would you have to believe about yourself in order to feel that you could safely ask for what you want? The fourth belief that keeps you chasing love is, if I can make them feel safe, they will choose me. A possible origin of this belief is that you were the emotional anchor as a young child for an unpredictable, chaotic, or emotionally immature caregiver. You learn to regulate other people's emotions outside of you in order for you to feel safe. So if they were okay, then you could finally feel okay as well. How this shows up right now is you might date people with potential, but not actual readiness. You might avoid conflict. You might become a healer, a therapist, or the stabilizer in relationships with a chaotic partner that can't get their crap together. And you have this hope that your calmness and your steadiness will finally earn their commitment and possibly heal them. The hidden cost is that you delay your own needs. You fall in love with their potential rather than who they are right now. You might even become addicted to the high of helping people, mistaking maintaining some sense of control with connection. And here's the secure shift from shifting out of this and beginning to see beyond it into a place of secure attachment, trust of yourself, trust of life, trust of others, is to realize it's not my job to earn someone's readiness. You deserve a partner, not a project. Real connection is mutual. It is not something that you have to manage. A couple thoughts for you to consider. What do you get to avoid by being the rescuer in a relationship? What do you get to avoid by rescuing other people in a relationship? What do you get to avoid within yourself? What do you get to avoid looking at or avoid experiencing by being a rescuer? And what would you have to give up in order to start opening to receiving love and looking across in your life? Where are you more loyal to someone's potential than your own inner peace? Where are you more loyal to another person's potential rather than your inner peace? All right, and finally, we're talking about the fifth hidden belief that keeps you chasing love. It is, if someone really saw me, they would leave. If someone really saw who I was, they wouldn't want to be with me. This is a really painful one. Where might it come from? Most likely, authenticity at a young age led to some type of rejection or withdrawal. where being your full self, being vulnerable, was not met with love and receptivity, but rather rejection. So you learn to curate yourself into what you thought other people wanted rather than who you were. And how this shows up in your modern day relationships is you filter your truth and you only show what you believe to be acceptable in relationship. And therefore your relationships become this confined prison where only a small sliver of you actually gets to live. Your real authentic self is something that you reserve in the background for you or perhaps for friends, but in your intimate partnership, there's not as much of a place for that there. And the self-fulfilling prophecy of this is that you might attract a connection that is skin deep, where every room you walk into with this person, you don't really feel seen or known by them. And you might even feel that they don't have an interest in actually knowing who you are fully. So the secure shift that begins to pull you out of this line of thinking, this operating system, and points to a place where you can start to be more connected to who you are and be loved for it, is to begin to believe and begin to truly decide that you are most lovable when you are most yourself. You are most lovable when you are most yourself. Real love begins where pretending ends. The truth of who you are isn't too much. The truth of who you are is exactly what will attract the right person into your life. So a reflection for you on this one to begin to journal on, to think of more deeply, is what would you have to believe about life and other people to fully reveal yourself? What would you have to believe about life and other people in order to fully reveal yourself in relationship? And then just to examine, what version of myself am I keeping locked away out of fear of rejection in my relationships and dating? What version of myself am I keeping locked away or hidden because I fear that I'll be rejected if I do? So those are the 5 beliefs that keep you chasing love. They're often hidden beliefs. Hopefully in today's video, we can begin to move you from a place of unconsciously operating from that old operating system to beginning to tease in this new operating system that can help you begin to move into more secure love. And remember that security and trust in self and life is a moment-to-moment practice of staying with yourself even when the old strategies take over, because they will. Let this video be the beginning of a new pattern for you, and one that is not rooted in fear, but is an actual love for yourself and trust in life, trust in others. And if this is something that you'd like to look into more deeply, I'm actually going to include this entire video as a guide here shortly underneath the video, where you can opt in and I will send this entire video in a PDF to you so you can do the exercises on your own. They'll all be typed out and you'll be able to come back to this material again and again in written form. So if you want that, check the link below this video in the description. It should show up in the next couple days. And if you are looking to do this deeper work of helping you resolve this type of patterning, if you can relate to it in your life, of feeling anxious, not trusting yourself, continuing to push love away, or feeling like you have to chase, this is the deeper work that I do with people. I've been doing it for 12 years, and I would love to have a conversation with you if you feel that would serve you at this point, to learn more about the approach that I take with people and what we can create together. There's a link to a coaching application in the description below. And if you have any questions or comments on this, please feel free to comment below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.